when the world's too dark of a place to be, and you need an escape from reality. Open up those pages, it's sci-fi or fantasy, whatever genre you please. And join a book club, 'cause you won't read it on your own. Join a book club, so you'll be held accountable. It's just a means to an end, but you're doing it with your friends, so join the book club by DLC.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to the DLC Book Club, the only book club that I'm aware of that starts with dancing. I'm Jeff Kanata. I'm here with Lana Bashinsky. Hi, Lana.
Hello, good morning. It's been a minute, but I am so happy to be back. I've been reading ravenously, and I'm so excited to chat about
Ravenous reading.
Yeah.
I am so excited to be back as well. I'm excited to see you. The reason we have not done one of these episodes in a few weeks is because you were on your honeymoon,
Yes.
traveling through Italy. Amazing.
Yes, it was fantastic. And we went away on a European adventure a bit before I went on my honeymoon. You sent me this video of you like peacefully reading on a train, like the beautiful landscape city outside, and I was like, oh, I want that so bad. And then immediately we get there, it's like, it's train time, baby. Italian countryside flying by. I've got my books, and I was like, yes. So I get to it. It was like immediate gratification of being like, I want that. I have that. So yeah, the honeymoon was great. Lots
Beautiful.
of reading. Yeah.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful to hear. We'll talk a little bit more about that in our non-spoiler section, but I just want to let people know we are now on the second novel of the Malazan Books of the Fallen. We had completed all of our read-through of Gardens of the Moon, which is the first novel, and we are now starting Deadhouse Gates, which is the second novel. This episode will comprise the first 3 chapters. And Lana, already I'm like, just logistically, organizationally. So again, this novel is separated into books. The first, I think, 2 or 3 books have 5 chapters, and then one has like 8 chapters. It's a lot. So I don't know what we're going to do going forward. So I think maybe I'm proposing right now to you 3 chapters and then 2 chapters to complete
complete the
spill
book?
over into the next book. I don't know.
That seems good. I honestly didn't look ahead. I didn't do any, bad student, didn't do any additional research on the book at hand. The only research I did was from the YouTube comment that suggested, hey, the format actually changes, so you'll have to adapt. And I was like, oh, that's good to know. And so thanks to whoever said that. That works for me. If there's variable numbers of chapters within books, I think we can. I feel like we ended on like a pretty good spot. I think that was just an arbitrary number that we picked because there was roughly 3 chapters in a book in the last one-ish, kind of. But yeah, that sounds good to me. I feel like we'll have to message each other. So if we like end a chapter, we're like, that's like a major cliffhanger. We can either choose to go ahead or.
Well, I already had a problem because you were gone on your honeymoon for a little while, and then I had a Thursday where I was on vacation, and so we had extended period where we weren't doing this, and I've tried to commit to not reading past where we're talking about, so I'm not informed by later stuff in the discussion about the current stuff. So I had this whole week where I was like, I want to read more and I can't. Anyway, so we'll try to avoid that, and also we will try to convey to you folks that are watching and reading along with us, we hope, what the next episode will comprise, because we want you to be able to, come along with us. And we'll do that in the Discord, which is the DLC Discord, which is 5x5 DLC on Discord. There is a book club section, and there's a whole Gardens of the Moon subsection of that, and a thread for Deadhouse Gates, which has just started. So in there, we will communicate, how much of the book we're reading next. I think probably the next episode will be the last 2 chapters of this book, of this novel, which I think is called Raraku. Yeah. Anyway, but we're not going to talk any spoilers yet. I want to touch base with you a little bit. We always like to do a non-spoiler section at the beginning for folks that maybe aren't caught up with us and can still get something out of it. And since you were just on vacation, I want to talk a little bit about vacation reading, because I love reading on vacation, but I wonder if you ever feel like, I mean, vacation is all about relaxation, or at least some vacations. I guess some vacations are active and you're out doing, but I like a nice vacation where I'm relaxing. And I like to bring a book and try to read on vacation as well. And I wonder what your process is. Do you just read anywhere you are, or do you like try to find a place, or, you know, around your hotel or around where you're staying or anything like that, where is like your reading spot? Or how do you handle vacation reading?
Oh, that's like a great question, because I do get in my head about, like, you know, I can be very poetic with it in the sense that I'm like, I want to find a reading spot. I get very romantic about like the idea of like, oh, I want a great reading chair in my house. That's the reading chair. It is the perfect chair for comfort in a variety of ways of sitting to read a book. And I felt the same way on vacation. If I'm going to read, like, I get very torn between, I'm out in another country. How often do I get to be overseas exploring the world? And I'm here like reading a book. Is that a waste of my vacation? No, if I find a perfect reading spot. So sometimes like at least on this vacation, we were moving around a lot. We went to many different cities. And so some of our hotels had like a great, like, sort of oasis in the back area that was like a great place to sit. But other times I'd be seeking like, let's just go to get a coffee and sit at a cafe just for like an hour. So we're not wasting their time. Coffee, pastry, book in a square so you can like look up and people watch sometimes. That is very much how I want to be. But I'm also reading like constantly. We were on trains. We were like doing a lot of like traveling around, as I said. So reading always on the train, always having the book in the bag. If we have a moment of downtime, finding a day to be on a beach to just read the book. Like, I plan for vacation. I'm like, it's 2 weeks. Okay, I need like 4-5 books. Because I know I'm just going to fly through them.
I bring one.
What about you? What's your reading on vacation? I mean, one book, dedicated man.
Probably. Yeah, I'm lucky if I get through one on a vacation, which is so pathetic. I'm such a slow reader. I wish I was faster. Just recently, as you mentioned, I had a very quick turnaround trip for a job going to the UK. I went into England, and I flew into to London and had to take a train to Bristol, where we were shooting this thing at a castle in Bristol, this D&D campaign that I was DMing. And I was like, oh, reading on a train is going to be amazing, as you said. And I texted you, and it was, but I'm conflicted in those moments, kind of like what you were talking about, because I'm on this train in a place, going to a place I've never been. I'd been to London before. I've never been to Bristol, but I'm in a train all by myself. I was like in a car. There was like one other person in my train car at the time that I was going. So it felt amazing, peaceful, you know, it wasn't crowded or, you know, jostling for position. It was just like this amazing, tranquil, beautiful, idyllic situation. And I'm conflicted because this is the perfect way to read a book. I just feel like I'm reading fantasy. I'm kind of in this, you know, living in America, nothing's old here, but you know, I'm around old things, and it's a book about old cultures, and it's perfect. But also, looking out the window is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. So I'm like conflicted between, oh yeah, read. No, I don't want to miss all the things that are going by out the window. So I was very much like, I would read, you know, this is probably why I'm such a slow reader. I read a few paragraphs, stare out the window longingly, read a few paragraphs, look at church, you know, like that. That's
it. Definitely is the moment where I'm like, I really should have gotten an audiobook for those things. It's best of both worlds. You get the story, you get,
it's a good point,
whatever the mood is coming in through the window.
That's so true. But there's something also about like physically reading on a train. It's so delightful. But to answer that question even more generally, I also love finding the spot. If you go to a sort of a beachy kind of vacation where you're going to be lying next to water, that's awesome to read,
Mhm.
you know, on a lounge chair on the beach. I love that. But I'll tell you, one of my favorite memories from traveling is my wife and I stayed. It was also in Europe. We stayed at a this amazing resort's the wrong word. It was a cooking school that we did,
Yeah.
and they had this outdoor area with hammocks.
Ugh.
Oh, reading in a hammock.
A hammock? I'm a hammock kind of gal.
Me too.
I
I'm
love
also
a
a hammock gal.
Growing up, we didn't have like trees in our backyard that you could string like a full hammock, but we discovered, I felt like we were the only people, I'd never seen one before, like a single branch hammock that's like a net on a stick that stretches out fully into a lying down hammock.
Oh, wow.
It's like picture a hammock, but it gathers at the top. And being in the
That sounds like
hammock
a
in the
sack.
backyard, put yourself in the sack. But you can also sit upright in it. Like the netting would sort of like, it could be like a chair or it would recline fully.
Oh,
It's like a
nice.
very cool hammock situation. But growing up, like a teenager, either like in the backyard, like emo journaling or like, or reading with like just like the light filtering through the trees. Give me
Love
the
a hammock.
Love
a hammock. In fact, my wife got me a hammock several years ago as a gift. It is one of those freestanding ones that looks like a little boat, you know, like a wooden boat, and it's and I love it. Living here in Denver, I have to take it down every season, you know, because snow will accumulate. I don't want that. But we're, you know, spring is springing, and I'm just about to put the hammock. We've had a lot of rain lately, but I feel like it's just about hammock time.
Yeah.
About hammock time. Stop.
And
hammock time.
Boo. If you get out there, also like it's spring, it's not quite warm enough. Hammock, blanket, cozy up, hot coffee.
Yeah. I also bring a
cold
little
air.
pillow.
Yes.
I think I bring a little pillow for the hammock.
Mm-hmm.
It's the best. Hammock's the best. In fact, I got this Instagram ad for this incredible looking hammock, and I was like, honey, can we get one of these? It's only like $200 only. And she's like, where are we going to put it? Was stretched between these trees in this amazing Instagram ad. And she's like, where are we putting this? I was like, I don't know.
By the way, I ordered 3 trees.
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, well, maybe we'll
15
go
years from
camping
now.
and we'll want to put it up. And she's like, what?
Do you
We're not gonna
camp?
want to put up a hammock when we go camp. I was like, anyway, that's our non-spoiler segment of the
So
show.
while I was gone, did you have like another book that you picked up in between? Or are you like, this book club, this is what we read in period?
Well, mostly the latter. I do have another book that I want to surprise you with when I'm done. But
Okay.
that is I'm doing an audio form. So I'm doing the thing that we talked about, one of the first episodes we did, where like having a written physical book and an audio book concurrently, and it's working out great. But basically what happened was I got to our stopping point and wanted to read more and just went, I'll use my free time to do the other things that I've been putting off. So
Beautiful. For anyone curious or anybody who wants to chat about it in the Discord with me, I did rip through 4 books while I was on vacation that I would die to talk about with anybody. One is The Green Futures of Tycho, which is a super short story. It's only about 100 pages. It's by William Slater. Very sweet story about time travel, sci-fi. It's great. Maybe I should save this for my recommendations. This is all 4
maybe,
books I read.
yeah. You should recommend 4 books. The thing is that Lana's trying to start side book clubs without me because I'm so slow. I get it.
I will say one of the books I did read was for my other book club, but it's for my work book club that we're like reading books about leadership. So it's not like a fun book club. It's like my job.
I'm so envious of fast readers. I'm just like not that guy.
We're gonna get there. That's what the book club's for.
We're gonna get
You
there.
practice.
Yeah, and it's like I haven't practiced the previous 40 years of my life. Anyway, all right, let's jump in because we got a lot to cover, even in just 3 chapters of Deadhouse Gates. So, spoilers starting now for the first 3 chapters of Deadhouse Gates, the second novel of the Malazan Books of the Fallen by Steven Erikson. Starting with the prologue and then the first 3 chapters. And immediately, I will tell you, Lana, I was so excited to talk to you about these books because I feel like It's about sisters who fight each other.
That's what I do, baby. Not anymore.
Not anymore.
For many years.
Yes,
Physical fighting.
Lana has a twin sister who composed and performed the awesome theme song for our book club and is amazing. But you've described many times that your childhood was very much confrontational, batting of heads, fighting each other.
Yes, it's that feels so distant that when I feel like I read stories about sisters fighting each other, I'm like, that's dumb. But like the level of like violence, emotional, physical violence between my sister and I from, born as twins in the womb, versus like till we were like 19. Like some of my friends' first memories of us are us like beating the crap out of each other in the snow, like physically brawling, fat lips, being like, let's go, and then like being very freaked out about us. But we're fine now. But so reading this story, you saying that when you're like, oh, this story's about sisters, I'm like, oh, I know exactly what you're talking about now. Doesn't even register.
It didn't. When you were reading it, you were like, "Oh, I
angry
connected
sisters."
This?
No, not at all.
Ah, I thought for sure you were going to be like, as soon as we heard about Felicin and what's her Tavor?
Yeah.
Tavor. I was like, oh, this is going to be Lana. This is going to be right in Lana's wheelhouse. She's going to be all about this. No?
There's like elements. Well, something I want to touch on about the book is like, what's the word? Right away, very tonally different. I don't know exactly who listens to this video, this booktube of ours. But if you've been listening with your kids and you're like, let's take the kids on the journey, I advise maybe not as much now. The title Deadhouse Gates probably gives way. Oh, there's like, it's like a darker kind of title versus, Gardens on the Moon, Deadhouse Gates. It's like so much darker. There's raunch. There's like the gore. It's like a lot. Everything is like sinister, but with like little moments of levity that I still enjoy.
Definitely has levity. It definitely still has like comedic scenes, and some of them are very darkly comedic too.
Yes.
But I think the first book is still very adult, but it's not as sort of disturbing as even the first couple of chapters of this one.
I was like, whoa, Steven, okay, I see you.
Yeah, it gets really dark. I mean, the first thing we see, by the way, the very first thing in the prologue is one of the craziest ideas I've ever seen in a fantasy book is like this sect of priests that during a very specific time, in order to sort of commune with their god, rub the blood of murderers on their body and leave it there long enough that flies swarm them and just live on their body.
Yeah.
So foul, but so evocative too. Like what an image that is. And what we've heard in real life about, forms of penance that super religious people have taken over, the hundreds, thousands of years of human existence, whipping themselves and all this stuff like that. This is that taken to such a visceral it's just such a, immediate, like that's like the first image in the whole book.
Yeah. So it's Jeff, my husband, who's also named Jeff. I don't know if we've mentioned that on this show. He started reading it as well because he's been sort of following along with our YouTubes, and he's like, cool. Different tone. I'm like, oh, did you get to the beheading? And he's like, not yet. I'm like, oh, that's the first thing that like everything about the first part of the book is like into like the grimier, grittier, gnarlier, like sort of tone setting for this book. And I don't like horror genre. I don't like horror imagery. I love weirdly violent, horrific books. Love Stephen King. I feel very immersed in it. I don't know if that makes me like repugnant. Like psychologically, some therapist out there is like, we should talk. But I love it. I think it's very cool.
Me too. I mean, I love the sort of the description of these horrible moments. For some reason, I'm not into like super violent. That's not true. Sometimes I am. Anyway, I don't tend to go to like horror movies but I'll read books of it, like just the verbal description of that stuff. And in fact, I do it myself when I'm DMing. I get really specific about the violence, and I don't know.
I used to do that when I would like host like Werewolf or Mafia. I'd be like, and the villager died, and I'll tell you exactly how.
Right. And yes, you're right. We start in that prologue. Well, first of all, we are on a different continent than we were in the first book. Genobacchus is where Gardens of the Moon takes place. Here we're on, the 7 cities over on the other continent. And things are bad. Things are bad. We had like open rebellion. We got warring factions. Lysine, the Empress, is barely holding things together, promoting people she was formerly warring with just to sort of try to appease those factions. And so you have this parade of 300 slaves, people, not even slaves, nobles who are now being turned into slaves. The nobles,
they're like the disgraced people from society that the Empress, through her new adjunct. I can't believe how bad I am with names. Adjunct Felison's sister.
Yeah,
What's her name? Tavor. Adjunct Tavor feels like she's sort of got something to prove. She's like, I'm not like that other adjunct who did bad went against it. And so she seems like she's bringing down the hammer pretty hard as like something to prove and rounding up all these disgraced nobles and citizens.
And interestingly, both of them are sisters of our friend Ganos Perron.
Yes.
So I thought that was cool right away.
I forgot about that actually until you said that. Yeah, they're like, oh, aren't you like Perron's like sister or like in the house of Perron, youngest daughter? And I was like, ooh, siblings.
Yeah, and they don't know their brother disappeared, and they don't know what's happened to him. It's like, oh, we know what's happened to him. So we are automatically sort of or initially introduced to this trio that seems like one of our main groups of characters. Felison, Bowden, and Heberick. I love how this book, by the way, starts with not one but 2 historians as main characters. I love historians, like the heroic historian. It's so rad. So Heberick has no hands, got his hands cut off because of he wrote the history of Lysine taking power, and it was critical of her. And Bowden is your boy who's like, hey, if it's getting bad, all the townspeople are like, yeah, kill the nobles. He's like, you want to see something bad? And he grabs the old lady, wraps his chains around her neck, and literally just saws through her neck.
Yeah. So what's happening, as far as I can tell, in that moment, that's very interesting, is you have like ostensibly people who were in this society of people in this city, and then you've got guards, not the Crimson Guard, but the Red Blades.
Yeah,
are those 2 different things, I assume?
Yes, the Red Blades are
like
different
they're like the city police in this place. Yeah. And so the Red Blades are sort of keeping the other citizens back, who are now like, boo, all of you who were probably just a part of what our society was a bit ago. We'll tear you apart. And the guards are like, no, don't. Stop.
Yeah.
And everybody who's like chained in this 300-person line can see it's about to get bad, and the guards are going to be like, oh no, they got out. And so sure enough, that's what happens. And the big boy, what's his name?
Bowden.
Yeah. Bowden is in the line, and he's like, if it gets bad, I'll make it worse. And he basically, the line breaks, the citizens come in and start like tearing the people in this chained line limb from limb, their hair off, their clothes off. They're very, very violent. And Bowden's basically like, you like violence? You want to kill these nobles? I'll do it for you. And like stares them in the eyes, saws this lady's head off, and like throws it in the crowd. And all of them are like, gross, that was so messed up. And
we wanted that, like, but we weren't really sure that we did. And now we are kind of regretting wanting that.
We didn't want like that. And so then all the guards are like, wow, that was really messed up, and kind of come in and they stop. And in that amount of time, of the 300 people, like 2/3 of them are killed by the citizens. and the rest of them have made it to march off into the slave camp.
Yeah, they survive long enough to become slave labor in the Ototaro
Woo!
mines. Yeah, congratulations. You
remember that powder? They're like, if you put it on your skin, who knows what could happen? They're mining it.
Yeah. I also love the detail of the fact that they usually send mages into the mines because it dampens their magic, and oftentimes will kill them because of how, like, separating them from their magic will it messes them up too much. So cool. Anyway, so that's just the prologue. Then we get into that's not the prologue. I'm sorry. Those are scenes in the oh no, that is the prologue. Yeah. Okay. So chapter 1, we've got new characters. Mappo Runt and Icarium, which seemed like a really fun duo immediately to me. But I wonder if you remember that we heard about both of them. We heard about Icarium from Animander Rake. Do you remember Animander Rake was like, hey, I met this dude Icarium thousands of years ago, and he is obsessed with time, and he makes timepieces, and we would always argue, blah, blah, blah. It was like a total throwaway moment. But this is the dude who's obsessed with timepieces.
I definitely did not register that detail, but very dope.
Very dope. Very dope. Anyway, I really like these two. They're kind of moving across the desert. They come across some divers. Why are we pronouncing that? Divers?
Yeah, it's got to be because of the apostrophe. Divers?
Yeah. I like Allen Iverson is one of my favorite basketball players. Anyway, divers are sort of like the Soul Taken. Soul Taken can shapeshift into one thing. We saw Animander Rake shapeshift into a dragon at the end of
as in like a single being.
Single shape, yes, single creature. Whereas the divers shapeshift into groups.
Yes.
So we see them fight off some panthers? What are they? Leopards? Yeah.
But it's one quote unquote person. It's one of this thing, but it shapeshifts into a horde of things.
Yes. And I think that the point of all this is that we are to learn that divers and Soul Taken are sort of being called to this path of the hand, I think it's called. There's this process that's happening where they're trying to reach these gates that we don't know about yet. I wonder if they're the Deadhouse Gates. Don't know. But
somebody mentioned them as though they were like a warren in the book.
Yeah.
So there's some kind of deep magical energy that's pulsing and calling all of the shapeshifters. And there's the possibility that if like whichever shapeshifter is victorious, I assume in some great battle of some variety, maybe, whoever's first, finders keepies.
Yeah, it's a mad world. It's a race.
Exactly. So maybe we don't know. The implication seems that if there's going to be like a great battle of these shape-shifting powerful beings, that if one of them wins, can possibly gain ascendancy, which would put them in the impression I get is like tyrant status of like amazingly powerful. They could command the planet if they so chose, if they ascend.
Do we think that Animander Rake has ascended? Is that why he's so powerful?
I had not thought about that. The way they talked about it, maybe. I mean, people were like, the tyrant, and Animander Rake was like, maybe. So, like that level of power that people are feel fearful of, I think that's sort of something interesting that Erikson has done in the book is being like, what they are fearful of in the scheme of the actual possibilities of the magic in the world could be like the lowest possible thing.
Right.
They've never seen anything like it. And I don't know. So maybe.
It's cool. I think that is going to be a major thread going forward. It seems to me that we have all these sort of things percolating. Like they keep talking about the apocalypse, which is basically the way they refer to this open rebellion that's happening. So we got that percolating, like the rebellion that Lacine's trying to put down, but seems to be happening. And we know that from the previous novel that a lot of the things that Dujek and all those folks were trying to do is like start the rebellion.
Mhm.
So all of that is percolating, as well as this thing that's happening with, magical beings that can shapeshift. Like there's this thing that's happening that doesn't happen very often where they have this chance to ascend. So I feel like all of these things are bubbling up and are going to, reach a crescendo at about the same time, and it'll be chaos across everything. That's the sense that I get,
Mhm.
which is cool and exciting. That I like that tension and that sense of, foreboding.
Yeah.
So we've got those two guys. Anything else you want to say about Mappo and Ikariam right now? I know later on in later chapters, we see more of them. They're hanging out. They meet up with another dude in a temple.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of don't know what their deal is yet, but they're very interesting characters, and their patter is very fun. Like one of them tries to disguise themselves as something they could literally never pass, like a super short,
Yeah.
And then it's fun. They're fun.
Yeah. I don't know if we like try to go in like chronological order of like what the chapters are, or just like this is Mappo and Ikariam.
Yeah, you can do that. That's fine.
The other sort of like big Ikariam piece that I think is interesting is let me ask a question. So do you have like the partner guide again? I'm once again just seeing how much I can glean.
There
as,
is
like, an
a
experiment for
partner guide
myself.
for this one. The same group did it, or I don't know, author. It is Sleep in X on X Bed is the person who did it. The user from Reddit. And yes, I am still consulting that, mostly because we're doing this and I want to be accurate.
Yes. So Ikariam, he's like a half Jagat, like same. I thought they were
half Jagat and a whole Trell. So that's their whole thing. Is one's a full blood Trell, which is kind of like an orc, I think.
Yeah.
Traditional Tolkien-esque orc. Obviously it's its own thing, but that's the image that I get in my head. And the half Jagat, which we know Jagats are
orcish.
Well, they're awesome and powerful.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so that was like the Jagat tyrant was like the big foreboding bad in the first one, and the interesting, you get the Trell being like little like italicized into his mind glimpses of fear that he fears either for Ikariam, of Ikariam, both.
Right.
Ikariam is clearly experiencing something, and while they're fighting the divers, the Trell's like, yeah, I fought off like one of them, maybe two, and I looked over at Ikariam and slaughtered 5 of the leopards.
Right. Yeah.
And then later it's revealed Ikariam's like, by the way, you seem like hurt. Did we fight? So he's got some kind of memory loss situation. And the fact that you tied it back to like, oh, Animander was like, oh, this guy loves time. I'm like, is he a Chromie situation? Like totally like, like lost and just kind of confused and like time traveling. Maybe he's like mentally going through phases of himself, but very interesting sort of tie into like, what's his deal?
Totally.
Seems like he has the possibility of great power and violence.
Yes. And I love the fact that he's always building little timepieces and clocks and stuff. That's cool. But I think his major thing seems to be he's pushing Mappo to do things Mappo might not be super comfortable with, because he's so compelled to try to reclaim his memories. Like that's the sense that I get, is that he really needs his memories back. And so he's like, oh, it's cool, we'll do this. And Mappo's like, are you sure we should be doing that? Because that seems super dangerous. Yeah. So
this random guy who brought us to the temple definitely like was ready for us. That seems sketchy. And he's like, it's fine. I trust him.
Yeah. He's like, one of his arms is weird. Did you notice the arm weird thing? Okay, so we also have, we're establishing, I feel like, our groups that we're going to be following, right? So we've got Felison and her group, we've got Mappo and Ikariam, and we've also got Duker, which is how I've been told is exactly how you pronounce it. Duker.
Not Jewiker.
Not Jewiker. Duker. Evidently, Erikson was on a podcast and pronounced it Duker.
Yeah, I got it.
So that's what I'm going to go with. But our second historian, And I like he feels like our way into the political machinations that are going on in a big way. And he's hanging out with Malik Rel, the advisor to High Fist Pormqual. And I really enjoy, even in Gardens of the Moon, there was like those scenes where it's just the High Council talking, like debating each other. I feel like Erikson knocks those scenes out of the park. I love, like, there's a couple of scenes where the scenes where Duker meets Coltane, who is the Wiccan
normal fist.
Yes. The scene promoted this way, even though the Malazan army and the Wiccans fought, and the Malazans beat the Wiccans, but in order to sort of bring them into the fold and get their loyalty, she promotes Coltane to command the army, and the army's not happy about that, which is cool. But that whole scene with all of them are like, "Hey, Pormqual wants you guys all to walk 1,000 miles just for him to check you out and make sure he gives you the thumbs up." And Coltane's like, "Nah, we're not doing that."
Everything leading into that scene in particular, I thought was like so awesome, from showing Duker's ability to like seamlessly blend in somewhere as like a local person while he's trying to do this historian, being like, there's all these markings appearing around the city that seems to indicate rebellion is like this close.
Yeah.
And like
some of those like markings aren't human hands. That's a little scary.
So like his own like things that he's interested in, we get like a little bit more of this character, him getting information about what people are feeling with the vibe by just like blending in this like market tent with a bunch of locals, and then eventually making his way into the Empire's political meeting spot, and then how he sort of postures like those group of people posturing, and then revealing like yet another person newly promoted because what's his face, Dujek One Arm is like, I'm out, Empress, we done here. So now she has this new High Fist, as far as I can tell, that's replaced Dujek, which is the name is the guy with the Pormqual. So we got Pormqual, and then we have this battlefield promotion with this Wiccan guy, Coltane.
John Coltrane.
He got cameo. He paid a lot for that.
he's commanding the army and then doing wicked saxophone solos.
And Coltane, another person with something to prove. So you got Pormqual being like, I have something to prove. You have to come here and prove to me that you're great. And then you have like this wizard, this mage that is like the soul of this old mage in him, but he's like this 10-year-old boy being like, Pormqual says you gotta come over here and check your boots. And he's like, we're absolutely not doing that. And he's like, wah, and kind of leaves or whatever. And then Coltane is like, now he's running drills on these people for the rest of the book, being like, you are not a good enough army. I will show you what a good enough army is. I'll know it when I see it.
Really cool. And that with the other character, Bult, B-U-L-T, Bult, who is like, it feels even more dangerous than Coltane in a lot of ways. And, Coltane just does whatever Bult says almost. That's a really cool dynamic. And you're talking about that 10-year-old kid, Sormo Inath.
Yeah.
Which there's tons of craziness around that I kind of can't wrap my head around yet. One of the hard things about doing this episode is, we've talked a lot about how even our experience with the first novel, it was sort of like keep reading and things will be more clear. And I kind of feel like we're in a lot of the first 3 chapters is a lot of internally for me, keep reading and a lot of it will become clear, but we haven't gotten that far yet. So I'm like, I haven't really wrapped my head around Sormo enough, but it's a really cool concept that it's so powerful that it's a warlock, right? That is so powerful that like it died a bunch of times and 11 crows came and.
So I got you here. I think I parsed this piece correctly. I agree with you. Overall, like I think the first time when we read the first 50% of the book, it was easier to be like, here's the big spikes.
Yeah.
But we're meeting everybody. And I will
Right.
say everything is like clearer than the first book was at this point. And so I feel like there's a lot of details that are juicy details
Agreed.
that I could sink into for all these bits. So
Yeah.
very exciting beginning. This guy, Sormo, I'm so sorry. I'm so bad with the names. I need a list in front of me that I just referenced so I can.
Well, he has the
I know,
dramatis
but
person.
In the moment, I need to say these are the ones that were in this chapter, so I don't be like, "What was it, Jeff?"
I got you though. That's what I'm here for.
You. So Sormo,
Sormo Enath.
So Sormo, it's interesting because I believe it's the Rivi people. They in the first.
Sormo. Sorry. Sorry.
Like, he's the most powerful warlock we've ever seen. He's like, hey guys. So the Rivi people in the first book, they talk about the Rivi believe that when a child is born at the right time, the soul of somebody ancient and powerful can be planted in that child. Which we've seen, Tattersail was reborn as a Rivi child. So we know that belief is not just like, sure, maybe. It's like, it's already happened. We've witnessed it in the first book.
Right.
This is an example of that as well. There was a war, and I think the Empire hung the warlocks out on iron pegs.
Yeah, Lucine murdered all the warlocks. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then this Wiccan was like, but she was a basically like kind of a fool for doing that, because the crows, who are magical and can help be sort of guide these souls to not go through Hood's final gate, and help them sort of live in ambiguity, and by taking their power and holding it until it is time to release it into a newborn Rivi child. And in the case of Sormo, such a powerful being that to hold all of the parts of his soul, to hold all of his magic, he had to be visited by 11 ravens versus just one holding the whole thing, spitting into a baby, being like, okay, 11 of us have to work together to hold all of the power of this guy. So he didn't die 10 times or 11 times. It took him that long to die because the ravens took that long to get there. There's still more in there, man. It's there's 6 more bags of groceries in there. I need some help lifting it.
Yeah. I'm going to need some help with this one.
Yeah. Each raven walking away with 50 of them. And they still there's more. It's a semi-truck full of
bags
oranges.
Of groceries in there. You're talking about my soul. No. Yeah, I know. But, you get the reference. Yeah. I love it. And I also love how you read way faster than me and also retain way more than me. That's not fair. But I love that you're here to help me out with that, because the way you describe it totally resonates with what I read, but you articulated it so perfectly, and it's so awesome. That's an awesome concept, and it shows you how powerful Sormo is. But yeah, so I like all of that stuff. And then Malik Rel, the advisor to Pormqual, is like, well, I'm mad. I'm leaving, and I'm gonna tell on you.
Malik was the one who, not Sormo. Malik was the one who was like, Pormqual wants you across the country by Tuesday. Right. I conflated that because I think I was just so enamored with the idea that Erikson has been he's the most powerful mage. And he's reveals, he looks like a 10-year-old boy. And it even says his voice is cracking. He's on the edge of maturity in a way that is hilarious. Just love that contrast.
So then, okay, so that's Duker's sections.
Duker's Krukers. And then we have our old friends from novel 1. And I loved, because I just assumed, I heard that this second book, the second novel, was set on a different continent, and we start with all new people. And I'm just assuming we're not going to touch any of the characters except obliquely from the first novel. And then we have Fiddler, Callum, Crocus, and Apsalar. I was like, oh, yay, my friends. We're here. We're on the boat. We saw them leave on the boat. We're on the boat. And it's so interesting that Fiddler feels like our point of contact here, because I felt like I didn't really have much of a sense of who Fiddler was from the first novel. We never get a POV
from Fiddler in the first novel, unless I'm mistaken.
I was like, wasn't he like the comedic relief? Like my memory of Fiddler is at the end, him being like, we were getting the bombs, but now there's a demon. That's like my memory of Fiddler from the first book, period.
Right. Yeah, but it's kind of neat that now we have a completely different insight into him. And, Crocus is still like, guys, we sailed the exact wrong direction to go to give Absalar back to her family. We literally sailed the opposite way. Am I the only one that noticed that?
I know I said it a million times in the first book. I just love Crocus being like this, like just a petulant, annoying, oblivious teenager. Even like to the point where in this book where he's talking with Fiddler and Fiddler's mad because Callum has decided to go off on his own, which we'll talk about in a sec. And he's like, oh, you're mad that Callum like pulled some stuff on you? And Fiddler's like, you gotta shut up, kid. And he's like, hey man, we gotta take absolute, I'm no fool. And he's like, okay, like hell you're not a fool. Like immediately like, you are the biggest fool. You are the number one fool, the epitome of fool. Like just cuts him off. And Crocus is like, yeah.
All right. I'm gonna go over here on the other part of the boat.
Yeah.
And I like how Fiddler, the one thing that's cool about Crocus is that he nails something that it seems like Fiddler didn't even think about, which is, hey, are you guys just hoping that if Callum doesn't murder Lacine, that somehow Absalar will like trigger back to being sorry and murder Lacine for you? And Fiddler's like, I hadn't thought of that, but I think that's exactly what Quick Ben wanted. I think I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. I think that's one of the best parts about Crocus is that he's not just an idiot. He like is definitely an idiot and like stumbles into things, but he'll say things like a teenager would. He'll just like spit out things that people are kind of like, and Absalar, we keep Absalar, right? And everybody's like, yeah, without like saying why. And he's like, is it because? And people are like, yeah, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Next.
And there seems to be something going on with Moby, the little winged monkey.
Yeah, he's got like a lot more of a feature.
Yeah, well, it's supposedly a familiar, which like in D&D terms means, a creature that's attached to you. So when Mammoth died, you would think that his familiar would also die, but it's not. So I feel like there's a lot of hay being made about that. And I'm like, oh, what does that mean? Does that mean Mammoth's not dead? Or does that mean Moby wasn't a familiar? Or does that mean Moby was Crocus's familiar all along?
Does that mean, or was it Crocus? Because Moby has like really attached himself to Fiddler, sort of against Fiddler's will.
Yeah.
Is Fiddler going to become magical and like will need this familiar, or is it? Yeah, it's interesting how often this creature is featured. That's for sure.
And we get Callum interacting with like an old friend and
friend,
an old associate, an old acquaintance, and that person drops a very important book that is going to be is going to play a big role in this apocalypse. If you bring it to I can't remember the name of that character.
Seers in the desert.
Yeah, there's like a SH
Dridgen.
word.
Oh,
Shuik or something like that.
Shiver.
Yeah. And so he takes the book as like an insurance policy. Says, well, if I've got the book, I'll destroy the book if anybody tries to mess with me. And I thought that was cool. And then there's all these very stringent rules about how you treat the book. The book can't see sunlight. You have to ride on a specific kind of horse with the book.
Yeah. So just for like a little bit of like tie-in. So this group that's like the group from the first book group, Crocus and friends. Callum has a scene where he has gone off away from Fiddler and Crocus and is sort of like gotten it. Well, we first meet Fiddler, who's like, it's so annoying that Callum decided to go see one more person in this city because he can sense rebellion. And he actually saves two girls from being sexually assaulted in an alley.
Yeah.
And he creates a relationship with somebody who apparently never meets people, is he is of a culture that he's been like pretending to be a part of, and he's like, man, I know you lying. And he builds this bond because he saved those girls, and he receives a special conch shell that will
he's got the conch,
give him some kind of protection through song. A very interesting sort of magic revealed of the power is through song, and this guy whose name I forget can just touch you.
Kimlock, the Tano Spirit Walker,
can touch you, learn everything about you, and then create a song that could either ostensibly destroy you or give you power. He can give you magic. It's almost like reminds me of like a voodoo doll or something. He could write a song that can affect you in some way.
Yeah, super cool.
Very cool. And Fiddler's like, no thanks, but I'll take the shell. Peace out. And then the next time we see him, we see Kalam separately, or Callum. I forget how you're saying.
Kimlock?
No, Callum separately.
Callum. Sorry.
We see Callum separately, and we sort of see his one more guy he wanted to meet, which is his old friend, aka somebody who owes him. He takes this book from them, and that guy gives him very explicit instructions what to do with the book, how to like get across the desert safely.
Yeah.
And then the next time we see Crocus and Friends, Callum's like, I'm taking this book and I'm out, and he's gone. And Fiddler's mad about it because now he's stuck with the teenage dum-dums. Yeah,
they're disguised as lovers that he's like taking pilgrims he's taking to all the holy cities. Mm-hmm. And they run into the guard, and the guard's like, have you heard about a single guy riding across the desert with a book? And he's like, no, I don't know anything about that. I don't think he says with a book, but anyway. So that's interesting. So they're like Callum's like 2 to 3 days ahead of them, but they're kind of going in the same direction. Mm-hmm. Ostensibly to still murder Lacine, right? Yeah. That's the whole plan, is to assassinate Lacine.
And Crocus, once again, in his petulance, is like, did you ever think about the fact that maybe Callum's actually in trouble and blah, blah, blah? And Fiddler's like, shut up, Crocus. And Crocus is like, wham, and leaves. But it's like a very astute observation.
Yeah.
Because Callum's buddy was actually looking to give this book away to some fool who's going to take it across the desert for him.
Right. A pawn. He's got like a.
He's a pawn in a broader game.
Also, I thought it was funny. You know, you so eloquently talked about the spirit walker, the song magic, which is so interesting, and the conch. But then the first thing Fiddler's like, I could sell this.
Yeah. He's like, this kind of magic seems like it would attract bad stuff, but I bet I could make $1.
Yeah. He's like, I'm giving you the most powerful item of all. Yeah. How much is it worth? But that was cool. We haven't talked about the more disturbing stuff with regard to our girl Felicin. And the fact that she's sort of using her body to make life slightly better in the horrible slave mines. Mm-hmm. How did you feel about that?
I really liked how quickly we got like the arc of Felicin, where she started, where she is now, and why she got there.
Yeah.
So like while she's like chained up with the first historian and the big boy, because I'm bad at names. We'll stay there. And now they're like fast friends. They're there together. And she's like, these are my guys. They protected me while we were chained up and being ripped to shreds. I will protect them, and I will use whatever I can to do that.
Yeah.
And so on the slave ship getting to the slave camp, she was like, oh, if I just have sex with all these people, they will give me things. And she's like, easy game, easy life. And so I think that kind of adaptability, I think, shows a lot of like her character.
Yes.
And it's interesting to see the fact, like one of the most disturbing things is like how young she is in the story. And that's also written in, again, in that like sense of petulance. So she's like doing this stuff to help her two friends that she's met in the heat of a moment of tension. And they feel so bad about it because they're like, I can't believe you're selling your body, to get me some soup, to get me a piece of bread. It's just like saying thank you feels like garbage because I don't want you to be doing what you're doing. And she's like, I'll do whatever I want. If I want, I'll make you work harder, because the guy who took a liking to me is like the head slave of all the slaves, who's like just doing more abuse to all the slaves. And I can make your life easy, or I can make it bad. And it's kind of her internal angsty dialogue that we see of her turmoil between being like, how dare they like judge me for doing these things, and I'm helping them and I can make it bad.
Right.
And so I think she is like very complex and interesting, and like just this tale of these three friends out of circumstance. I'm really excited to read more about it.
Yeah, and it sounds like, at least where we left off, there was the seeds of her distrusting the two of them too, because they think she's asleep, and Bowden comes in and talks to Heberick, thinking that she's like, why are they talking without including me? And what are they talking about? She can't hear what they're saying, but she's like, why are they conspiring without me? And I feel like that's the seeds of some discord among them. But also, our boy Duker is trying to organize somebody breaking Heberick out. Our two historian friends are like, he's trying to look out for Heberick. And so I feel like, and meanwhile, Fellison has been tasked to like look at the water level of the thing to try to. So I think there's going to be a sick prison break sequence I'm hoping for. I love a good prison break.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. So, I mean, lots of stuff, lots of lore. I mean, there's all kinds of sequences talking about the history of the seven cities, history of this area, how cities were built on other cities. I love that whole sequence talking about how they built this super heavy city on top of the ruins of another one. It was too heavy and it collapsed and it killed everybody. And this one dude, this kitchen guy, like dropped a beaker at the exact moment that it collapsed, and he thought he did it.
And then he was like, I can't believe it. And then he killed himself because of the guilt.
Yeah, and there's like a little memorial to him on the steps of like the guy who thought he was responsible.
Yeah.
It's so funny. It's that I love that kind of levity, that it's dark. Like that's a darkly funny thing, but it's funny,
Agreed. It's been, and like for only being 3 chapters in, it's like the right amount of, it's not like, oh, every group has like the comic relief character, because it's like dark stuff happening. It's just, it feels natural and human in a way, even though we're not always dealing with humans as humans are. But that connection of even people talking about dark things will make jokes at each other. Like laughter is just a part of life. Yeah. It feels very naturally woven in a way that I really like.
So how do you feel about the beginning of this novel compared to our experience with the last novel, and sort of just in general, like overall? It sounds like you're still motivated. We have a whole new group of people, but are you equally invested in these characters? Not as much, more? How do you feel about it?
I think I'm more invested in these characters than I was in the first book. I feel like if we had not read, like, I really do feel like the first book, it took me the first half to like have a couple pieces be like click and then sort of see everything. So there's like a lot of setup, but the setup felt more ambiguous, and there was a lot more of that mystery from this person's POV. Who is that person? Talking about kind of the same people, but like trying to remember details of them between who's who. This one, it feels a lot more, like I said, couple distinct groups. There's like a vision of like, okay, there's a rebellion. There's some kind of ascendancy, big cataclysmic moment for all these shapeshifters. There's like really clear chunks, and they're disparate chunks, but all of them feel really juicy. And I feel like I could really sink my teeth into any one of them in a very parsable way. So I think I'm more in than the first book, while it is still like there's a lot happening. What about you?
I think I mean, I was really in the first novel as well, with like, I was immediately invested in Tattersail and the mages, and we had that mage war that happened very early in the novel, and I was like, oh, this is awesome, and the way it's described is cool, and the moon hanging in the sky, all of that stuff I immediately was hooked on. But I think the difference in this one is that I already kind of feel like I know everybody's goals, or at least each group's, not everybody, but for most of the groups, like there's these folks that are on a boat and they're headed to try to assassinate the Empress.
Mm-hmm.
There's this girl whose sister totally betrayed her and she's in peril and she's trying to get out of it and wants to get revenge on her sister. You know, like there's these big kind of meta goals. And whereas in the first novel, we start with, you know, Absalar, who wasn't called that yet, but you know, this Fisher girl getting possessed and we don't understand why or what's the goal. And even with Whiskey Jack and the group and all that stuff, it just did. And even Tattersall, it just felt like stuff was happening, but there wasn't,
like,
none
what
of
do
the
you
characters
want?
had. Yeah, nobody, exactly. We didn't understand their
driving force.
Yes. Thank you. And here I feel like it's much clearer because everybody is pushing forward for something, which gives the book a lot more momentum for me.
Yes, I agree.
So yeah, I mean, it's awesome already. And there's a lot of new stuff and a lot of really cool, complex things. It's still, you know, I think very, very dense with ideas and with history and stuff. But I mean, I don't know. I'm not overwhelmed by it. I'm anxious to read more. So
same here.
Should we do our favorite sentences?
Yes.
All right. Every episode we pick a sentence that we loved from the sections that we read that episode. I will let you go first.
It's funny that you mentioned like the history and the lore and the specifically like cities built on cities. My favorite sentence comes from the description of 7 cities and the section where it's specifically talking about that as what people sort of say.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Okay. It was said each city rose on the backs of ghosts, the substance of spirits thick like layers of crushed bone, that each city forever wept beneath the streets, forever laughed, shouted, hawked wares and bartered and prayed and drew first breaths that brought life and the last breaths that announced death.
Beautiful. I almost picked that same one. Yeah. I thought that was such a great and incredible and so evocative. And it really, you know that Steven Erikson, the author, has a history of working as an anthropologist and had gone all around the world and participated in digs and things. And you really see that perspective come through. And it's so true. It's like every civilization is living on the ghosts of old civilizations. It's such a powerful concept. Beautifully written too. My sentence is short, but I just think it's such a beautiful way to describe something. It's during Fiddler and Crocus and everybody, and they're talking about when they should leave. And Fiddler says, "Our shadows are already too short for the leagues we travel this day."
Yeah, I like that too.
What a cool way to say we got to go. Our shadows are already too short. So like, it's too late in the day already. We gotta leave. Our shadows are already too short for the leagues we travel this day. Ah, beautiful.
Love it.
So good, right? All right. So that leaves us with just one more thing to do, and that is give you another book recommendation. It sounds like Lana has several.
I do. If anybody wants to go on the same sort of reading journey that I went on through the honeymoon, I already mentioned The Green Futures of Tycho by William Sleater. Great short book about time travel. Very cool. I also read Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. It was so good.
Really?
Man. So good. If you are interested in video games, if you have want insight into like game development and like internal thought, it was like I wrote this on Twitter, but it was like somebody took pieces of my life and chopped them up and changed the names and put them in between pieces of what felt like must be somebody else's life. Wow. It was so much.
Yeah, if you're just getting to us via YouTube randomly searching for the Malazan Books, you should know that Lana is a professional game designer and does that for a living. So
game developer. I'm not a designer.
Excuse me.
Don't worry about it.
Yes. Anyway, works in the game industry, and so and the book takes place in and around the games industry, right?
Oh, so deeply. Like within the first chapter, there's like somebody being like, as it would say in a future Kotaku article. It's like it's in a way where I'd be like, if somebody could do that and I'd be like, lame. It's not. It's very good, to the point where I was like, Gabrielle, who are you? Where
Who are you really?
What you ship? Like, it's so precise. I also read through Stephen King's Jumaki. It was very good. It was one of my favorite Stephen King books that I've like read in recent years. Really enjoyed it. A story about artists and like magical horrors from art. Love to see it. And finally, I finished How to Win Friends and Influence People for my work leadership book club, which is a fascinating book because it's very old. The language is very funny. But that title, I've always been like, what a gross title.
Yeah.
You read the book and you understand why. It's like one of the greatest marketing hooks I've ever seen. I would love to talk to anybody about it. I think it was genius. So,
well,
those are my Rex. Sorry,
I feel
lots.
very slow again.
No.
I'm very jealous. I've been wanting to read tomorrow. It's on my list, and I was like, well, maybe after we get through all the Malazan books, maybe we'll do the. Lana's like,
It's so good.
I'm jealous.
I'll read it
of you.
again. I'll read it again.
No, it's okay. I'm jealous of your speed. I need to get better. All right. I'm actually going to cheat on my recommendation because I got an email that was sent to dlcfeedback@gmail.com, which is the email for the video game podcast that Lana and I do. And this comes from Richard in Texas, who says, this was a DLC book club recommendation email. Richard says, I know that y'all are working your way through the Malazan Books, the Fallen series, but if I had one Christmas wish this May, it would be for you to read The Foundation next, which was new to me and I fell in love with, but I'm sure you've already read it. To which I will respond, yes, I have read the Foundation novel, Isaac Asimov's Foundation novels, I assume is what he's talking about. And honestly, was the book series alongside the robot novels, also by Isaac Asimov, that I read at 11, maybe, that made me fall in love with science fiction. I mean, I'd already fallen in love with science fiction because of Star Wars, but science fiction books, it was absolutely life-changing for me. And teeny spoiler, but Asimov wrote 3 Foundation novels, and he wrote a number of robot novels, and then he wrote a book that connected these 2 series and made it into one fictional universe, and it blew my mind as a kid. Blew my mind. And I know that they've made a television series now based on the Foundation novels, which I only watched a couple of episodes of. I think it's actually decent, but read them. The concept of the Foundation is so amazing, and it honestly resonates more now, I think, than ever, because we are in the era of big data and algorithms running our lives. And the concept of the Foundation is that this dude named Harry Seldon came up with an equation, an algorithm that used big data to predict the future. And so he started doing things to ensure that humanity would survive across millennia based on his predictions. And it's awesome. I mean, it's an optimistic view of what big data and algorithms can do. And as a kid, it absolutely dazzled me. So great recommendation from Richard in Texas, and one I heartily agree with. And, you know, it's one of the great science fiction series of all time. But Richard goes on and says, if I had 2 Christmas wishes this May, I'd wish for y'all to read the Hyperion Cantos series next.
Oh, so good.
Yes. I've heard it said that Hyperion is one of the holy trinity of sci-fi books, including Dune and Foundation. And I'm currently on the 2nd book, but Hyperion is like a sci-fi Canterbury Tales. Yes, that is absolutely accurate, Richard. You and I have both read, you've read Hyperion, sounds like, from your reaction.
Yes.
Incredible.
I love those books. And some people I've heard be like, the Endymion side of it, like the next, like Hyperion, and then I forget the Fall of Hyperion, and then Endymion, and then Rise of Endymion. And people are like, the Endymion ones. But I
didn't get to those ones.
Oh, maybe you should read it just so you can go through them.
Yeah.
But I really like those as well. So they're definitely a different vibe than Hyperion. Hyperion is gold tier.
Yeah.
Endymion is like very good. But yeah, great Rex.
Great Rex. Thanks, Richard. And You can email us. Even better, even easier than that is to get on that Discord and put your recommendations and ask any questions you'd like answered in our non-spoiler section and interact with us. Tell us about your experience reading Deadhouse Gates or Gardens of the Moon or any books that you are reading. This is our book club. It's where we get to hang out and talk about how fun reading is. And we'd love for you to participate. So check that out. It's a 5x5 DLC on Discord. And it's a great community of folks talking about books and all sorts of other stuff as well. All right, Lana, I always forget something. Have I forgotten anything?
No, it was perfect. Flawless. Stuck the landing.
I don't know about that. Not flawless. But, at least I didn't forget anything major. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Keep reading.
When the world's too dark of a place to be, and you need an escape from reality, open up those pages, it's sci-fi or fantasy, whatever genre you please. And join a book club, 'cause you won't read it on your own. Join a book club, so you'll be held accountable. It's just a means to an end, but you're doing it